All right, we'll move on with some business news now with our business editor, Stephen Carroll. And Stephen, the financial markets, it seems, have had a bit of a scare, not anything to do with Halloween, it's to do with the US presidential election.
Yeah, we've seen the so-called fear index on Wall Street jump after new polls showed the gap between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton shrinking. The VIX index tracks volatility on the markets, and it's reached a level close to that of what we saw in the wake of the UK's vote to leave the European Union in June. Now, markets don't like uncertainty, and investors see more certainty for their money if Hillary Clinton wins, as she's a more experienced policymaker. The other measures that tend to react to uncertain times on the markets, gold rises, of course, in times of uncertainty, considered a safe haven asset. It's trading up today. And the Mexican peso has also become a proxy for this election as Donald Trump's position has improved. It's fallen against the dollar. It's down around 1/3 in trading a short time ago.
And is that affecting the markets today as well?
In Asian trading, we saw quite significant falls, in fact, on the markets. Again, that election uncertainty playing into investors' minds. The Nikkei in Tokyo, the Hang Seng in Hong Kong and the Kospi in Seoul all seeing falls of over 1%. If we look at Japanese exporters, they're concerned about what a Donald Trump as president might do to trade policy. Could affect their business, of course. Just one example, Honda Motors down 3.5% in trading today. In Europe, shares starting the day in the red as well. Falls across London, Paris and Frankfurt. Banks leading the falls there. Perhaps some profit taking, though, after recent gains in that sector. One company I've picked out for you is the Danish shipping firm Maersk. Their shares down 8% after reporting a 44% slump in profits.
All right, some company news from back here in France. The Air France airline is having a bit of a big day. The board is going to be discussing the airline's entire future later on.
The chief executive of Air France, KLM, is presenting his new strategic plan to its board today. Jean-Marc Janaillac was appointed to the job in July. His plan is called Trust Together. It's likely to continue efforts to boost productivity at Air France, where strike action has cost the airline more than €100 million this year. Now, one of the disputes that has been ongoing is with pilots at Air France. They've rejected company plans to make them fly more hours for the same pay. So what is life as an Air France pilot like now? Well, Catherine Viette has been finding out.
Arriving at the airport kicks off the beginning of a long day for pilot Laurent Bertuca. The captain's work begins on the ground. First, he reviews everything, like the weather and information about the passengers.
Our job is always to anticipate and make decisions, because up there, it's just you.
Let's go.
A check on the tarmac. Everything is closely examined before takeoff. The stakes are high.
V1, rotate.
And there's no room for error. However, the 47-year-old pilot is well compensated for the daily stress. He earns €10,000 a month.
I know I make a good living, but when you look at the salary earned, it's weighed against the responsibilities, the commitments and the constraints of the job.
It's been a year since Air France tried to lower pilot wages. The measure triggered a highly criticized pilot strike.
We know we're seen as privileged. A colleague who does what I do at EasyJet earns the same amount.
But for the same salary, Bertuca flies 100 fewer hours than his colleague at EasyJet, because Air France turnarounds are not as quick. Bertuca says he's happy to fly more and spend less time on the ground, but only if he's paid more. It's a sticking point between the pilots' union and Air France management. But for now, it's back to Paris.
I've got to tell you, all of us here in the studio were absolutely fascinated to see what it's like inside the cockpit there. Quite fancy being an airline pilot, actually.
Well, the one fact that was in that report is that 1 in 3 nights he spends in a hotel, so
goodness,
not much fun.
OK, maybe not so much. Let's move on to our next story. A security issue with Microsoft Windows, which a lot of us use.
Certainly do. The software giant says a weakness in its operating system that's being exploited by hackers will take another week to fix. The problem was discovered by researchers at Google, who told Microsoft about it on October 21st, when they saw that a patch hadn't been released to fix it. On Monday of this week, Google announced the weakness publicly. It affects older versions of Windows, whereby sophisticated hackers could, in some cases, take control of a user's computer. Microsoft says those with the latest software are protected, and it's criticised Google for making the details public before a fix has been released.
It's the kind of thing that is very worrying for people, isn't it? The idea of your computer being taken control of. We've got a little bit more bad news, unfortunately. That's for people who like a bit of orange juice with their breakfast, which is probably quite a lot of people, I'd say.
Did you know that you can invest in orange juice?
I did, yes.
The
Orange
index that
juice, all sorts of
tracks
things.
the price for orange juice in the future hit a record high on Tuesday, jumping by almost 5%. This after figures from the US Department of Agriculture showed the crop of oranges is less than half of what it was last year. At the same time, exports from the world's top supplier, Brazil, have been shrinking as well. That spooked investors. Orange juice futures have risen by almost 2/3 in the past year. So worrying times ahead. Buy now.
Indeed. Or switch to something else. Pink grapefruit juice.
Just
Another
as one
healthy
option.
Very good. Thanks so much. Stephen Carroll there with business news and breakfast tips for us here on Fright.